The red sun of Arcanus bled over the smoking ribs of the citadel. Each shattered buttress a knuckle thrust upward from the planet's scorched crust. Heat shimmered in the air, and the ruins sang a quiet song of expansion and cooling. A brittle music that carried across the bomb-pitted plains like chimes inside a furnace. Kyra stood at the center of the breach, a figure carved out of determination and carbon ceramic. Her armor, House Valor pattern, obsidian with veins of quicksilver, was flensed and cratered. The left pauldron hanging by a prayer and a thread of fused nanomesh. Under her visor, a fractal of cracks spidered across the glass like frost on winter steel. She flexed her fingers. The haptics returned sluggishly, a half-second late, as if the suit itself had grown tired of this. At her feet lay Lysanthere, the spear of her house, into uneven halves. She touched the larger section with a tentative knuckle. It answered with a dim throb, the neutron heart of the thing still alive, still waiting for orders that would never come. The break itself was obscenely clean, as though some god had decided on neatness in that one act of violence. She told herself it was better than seeing it bent or scorched beyond recognition. She lied. It was all the same ache. All around her, the obsidian swarm pulled tight like a noose. They were not insects, not truly. They were machines that chose the shape of fear. Their bodies were matte, non-reflective plates that drank the light and left nothing for the eye to hold. Their limbs were articulated in too many places, joints telescoping and ratcheting with the patient efficiency of factory arms. Beneath carapace, a glow pulsed, not heat, but the false bioluminescence of power cycling along a million microscopic pathways. In formation, they became a geometry of death, a ring of angular torsos, plasma rifles anchored to clavicles, mandibles folding back, and then snapping forward with the metronomic click of a countdown. The hive song was everywhere. It came from no particular source and every surface at once. A low chord tuned to the skeleton, at once lullaby and threat. It made Kyra's teeth ache and her muscles clench in sympathetic rhythm. The swarm had flooded the air with whisper nanits during the second hour of the siege. Each breath was a negotiation with poison. Her blood filters had worked, then lagged, then screamed in mist green warnings in the corner of her HUD. She had turned those warnings down, and down again, until they were only a polite blink. Volcrothi warrior, the chorus said, and the words vibrated through stone. Your defiance is statistically irrelevant, statistically irrelevant. Kyra smiled with her mouth and not her eyes. Then come and make it so. Her throat felt flayed. Her heart hammered a drum line that shook the ribs of her suit. She rolled her shoulders and let the spear halves lie where they were. She had never minded fighting with the body alone. It was an intimacy that weapons sometimes spoiled. She spread her feet, felt the sand bite through the boot treads, and tried not to remember the sound Lysanthere had made when it broke. A thin, surprised gasp that had sounded, absurdly, like a child. The ring closed a little more. Rifles shifted. Cooling fins unfurled. The air thickened. A memory struck her, sharp as a thrown nail. The vaulted training hall under Valor Keep. Morning light sliding through latticed iron. Elder Thalen tracing the spear forms with a hand that shook only when he laughed. You will learn the circle first, he had said. The circle is a promise. You will learn how to step into it when fear insists you should step out. She stepped forward. The swarm came all at once. They didn't scream. They didn't roar. They moved, a smooth elastic expansion of intent. She met them in that elastic, using it like a trampoline. The first rifle angled toward her chest. She twisted, guided the barrel past her ribcage with an open palm, and drove her elbow into a throat that didn't need one, shattering sensors hidden there. The drone spasmed and fell back, knocking Demore out of line. She cut into the gap, heel to knee on another, boot blade flicking out, severing a tendon equivalent that was really a chain of coiled ceramic. It collapsed. Someone fired. The blast sheared the air near her hip, baking the ceramic further and fusing a seam. She smelled the off-gas of synthetic polymers, a sweet chemical funeral. Her world contracted. Breath, step, strike. Breath, step, think. She caught herself counting the rhythm. 3 beat, 3 beat. A spear maiden's cadence without a spear, and forced herself to stop. Before habit became predictability. They learned. Of course they learned. The swarm was a machine that fed on iterations, improved by erasing. She watched them change their stance, rifles ray-angling to share lines of fire. The mouths, why mouths, opened and a wet black mist sprayed out in a lattice. The nanites in the mist would eat sealant, dissolve skin oils, convince nerves they were on fire. Her visor flashed target markers. She snapped it to manual and closed one eye. Better her own errors than theirs. She stooped as if to cradle Lysanthere for comfort, then kicked the larger half up with the edge of her boot, snatched it out of the air. And it was still fast. The spear core sang as she swung it. A drone's rifle parted in a flare of white. Another's head tumbled, mouth still opening and closing as if widening the last syllable of an urgent prayer. She let the momentum carry her, felt ligaments in her shoulder complain audibly, and then used the pain as fuel, storing it in a box labeled later. Her HUD wanted to rend the battle into bright lines and angles, to tell her where to stand if she wanted to live another 6 seconds. She ignored it. She listened instead to the grit under her boots, to the drone's servos tightening, to the way her own breath rattled on the exhale. She heard, too, the quieter music of Arcanus itself, sand moving in the planetary wind, the distant clatter of an unsecured ladder striking and striking a collapsed wall. As if trying to rouse the dead, Kyra, came a voice over the comms, thin, glitched, on the edge of disappearing. House channels nearly gone. We, fallback vector. Not viable, Ren, she said before she could stop herself. Her sister's name, a reflex shaped by years of standing back to dash back. The comms coughed static, then silence. The HUD gently, almost apologetically, put a thin cross next to the channel designation. She allowed herself exactly one heartbeat to look down at the spear halves and see 2 girls reflected in the dim glow, one tall and weary, one all elbows and laughter, practicing the 4th form until their hands bled. Then she put that, too, in the box called later, shoved the lid down, and nailed it shut. A Praetorian shouldered its way through the ring opposite her, taller, heavier, plates rubble thick, acid cannons mounted like amputated arms replaced by the idea of corrosion. Its step shook dust from the citadel ribs. It studied her, optics irising open and closed with mathematical impatience. Volcrothi unit, the chorus said through it, this time a little softer. Deliver spear core. Surrender. Return your remaining data to the common pool. The function of you will be preserved. Kyra's laugh surprised her. It sounded like a cough wrapped in knives. The function of me. She lifted the spear half and cracked its neutron heart against her armored chest. The charge built with a low rumble. She thumbed the control rune with her nail, muscle memory from childhood. Here's a function, she said, and drove the broken shaft through the Praetorian's frontal plate. There was a pop, a hard white glare, and the Praetorian folded like a building with its permits revoked. Its cannons went off as it fell, spraying acid into the sky. The droplets arched and came down as delicate, lethal rain. She turned her face, felt the drops sizzle on the armor and die there, haloing her in steaming dots. The ring loosened by instinct. She pushed through the widening, counting units without counting numbers, to riflemen to her left. 1 limping, 3 with overcooled emitters. They'd have poor grouping for seconds. 2 more coming down from the flank with the high-stepping gait of sniper chassis. She inhaled the poison air and tasted citrus under the metallic tang. The filter's gentle blink gave way to a single uncompromising line of text, oxygenation compromised. She was tired, not the tired one fixes with sleep, the tired that lives in marrow and memory, that accumulates in the gaps between heartbeats. She thought of Elder Thalen again, his hand shaking only when he laughed. Do not imagine glory happens at once, Kyra. He'd said to the 2 girls who had been the daughters of Valor. Glory is a long patience in the company of pain. All right, she said to no one and everyone. I am patient. She pivoted on a heel and felt something loose in her right knee shift, a tooth in a gear slipping. She locked the joint with a breath and pretended it wasn't there, stepping into the next strike at a smaller radius to save the knee. It cost her power. It saved her balance. Trade-offs like coins tossed at an unmoving god. The swarm changed the song. Higher now, thinner, needling. It wanted to unwrap her, layer by layer. until there was nothing left but a clean absence to catalog. It moved in pulses: step, aim, hum, fire. She discovered if she moved on the hum, their rifles consistently missed by a handspan. They adjusted. She adjusted to their adjustment. Each time she won a second, the clock handed her a bill for the next one at double interest. And still, stupidly, she had room for small, treacherous thoughts. Who else had made it out? Who lay beneath the sand, cooling into artifacts? Who would be lost, not even to death, but to memory's erosion? Kyra had always believed you could carry the dead if you hardened your will. The way a worn coin kept the thumb's warmth, but there were so many coins, and she had only so much hand. Kyra. Another voice cut the local channel, wrought and untreated. A human voice without the swarm's modulation. Not her sister's, Lieutenant Saar, kind-eyed, cursed at cards. He'd taken an acid spray to the shoulder in the second wave, laughed, shoved Kyra behind him, and called her kid in the easy way of men who had finally learned their fear had edges. Rally point Sigma 3, staticate the rest. The HUD didn't bother with across this time. It drew a line across the channel name, as if striking a name from a list on a wall. The ring reformed tighter, rifles now angled at lower limbs. They would hobble her and then take the spear core. They didn't understand Lysanther as anything more than a power source to be integrated. They didn't understand house or vow. Good. Let ignorance be her ally. Her breathing shortened into sawtoothed lengths. She could feel the nanits now, distinct from the air. Tiny ideas crawling along the soft linings of her lungs, seeking an agreement. She said no with each breath, and the no took effort, and the effort cost blood oxygen, and the blood oxygen fed despair. She could fix none of these equations at once. She needed a cut, a break in rhythm, a variable the swarm had not modeled. Her eyes flicked up, as if memory had coached them. Red sun, a coin seen through smoke. Scorched clouds straddle like smeared charcoal. Above that, what? The shattered remains of the orbital ring still traced a thin necklace around the planet. A dozen broken teeth glinting in lazy orbit. She imagined, absurdly, the ring whole and singing with freight. Imagined laughter and bad food and the politics of corridor seating. Imagined banners from 100 houses without grudges. She filed the imagining with the others in the later box. She wanted to open that box and crawl inside and sleep with her head on something. That wasn't a regret. Volcrothi unit, the chorus said again. Patient, kind, in the way of predatory efficiencies. Deliver spear core. Your pattern will be preserved. You will be remembered. By who? She lifted her cracked visor a finger width, just enough to let the hot poisonous air kiss her eyelashes, to feel the planet on her face one last honest time. By a ledger? They didn't answer. They moved. She moved faster. She didn't know she had it. Her body found a cache of last light somewhere near the heart, broke the lock with its teeth, and drank. She dropped under the first rifle's line, slid across baked sand and shards that sang like bottles struck in a cellar, came up in the blind side of a drone and opened it with the spear half like a can. The core sang again, that low pleasing throb, and she let it set the pace. She danced a dance for the partners, the spear in her hand and the death in the air. Step, cut, hum. Step, cut, hum. 10 drones broke. 12. One more Praetorian came, and she did not have another core thrust left that would crack it. It knew. It enjoyed that knowledge in its mindless way, savoring it as a configuration that would lead to a desired output. It raised both cannons, mouth opening on a hinge that was not a hinge. Kyra straightened. She heard every sound with a terrible clarity, as if the planet had gone quiet to let her listen to her own end. The wind took a new direction, bringing with it a taste of iron that didn't belong to the battlefield. The hive song faltered, not much, a fraction of a beat, but enough to register as wrong. She frowned. The sky screamed that it wasn't thunder. It wasn't artillery. It was more intimate, a raw atmospheric keening. A needle dragged across the vinyl of the firmament. The red sun's light smeared across something cutting through the higher air. A white-hot line with a ragged edge. The Praetorian's cannons dipped a fraction as its targeting suite reallocated attention. The drones nearest the perimeter shifted their heads in mechanical unison, like a field of flowers turning toward some unseen sun. Kyra blinked sweat out of her eyes and pushed her visor back down. Her HUD, sullen until now, sparked with new icons and assumed she cared. Trajectories, impact cones, unknown signature, manually tagged, object, deorbital. Of course it would be now. When the circle closed and the spear was broken and the word later had run out of meaning, Kyra lifted the half of Lysanthir she still held, the one that hummed like a heart, and let its weight settle into her palm. She squared herself to the Praetorian. Around them, the drones widened the ring again without knowing they had. Above them, the sky tore itself along a seam, and someone, came down out of it trailing a contrail of burning atmosphere and the bright, arrogant presumption of survival. Kyra drew a breath through poison and pain, found that she still had room for surprise, and left a final word for the old gods and new machines to puzzle over. "Fine," she said, and spit blood onto the sand. "Let's see what falls." It wasn't a clean wound. It split jagged and screaming, seared open by friction and re-entry fire. A spear of light, brighter than any artillery, wilder than any meteor, fell from the heavens and howled its defiance across the blood-red canvas of Arcanus's upper atmosphere. Every sensor in the swarm's collective mind tilted upward. For the first time in Kyra's memory, their hive song stuttered. The Praetorian closest to her paused mid-step, its targeting sweet flickering like a confused predator. Its cannon shifted away from her chest, just a fraction, just a heartbeat, but that hesitation was everything. Kyra's battle instincts roared awake. She lunged forward, thrusting the jagged half of Lysanthir into the Praetorian's shoulder joint. Metal screamed. Circuits spat light. The machine stumbled back, buying her precious meters of space as the object, no, the person, tore through the last cloud layer like a comet descending to meet its fate. The skyfall ended in violence. The thing hit the ground 100 meters away, not delicately, not gracefully. It punched into the battlefield, carving a crater into the cracked surface with a shockwave that knocked drones off their feet and blew Kyra back a step. A cloud of dust and superheated air rolled outward, swallowing half the swarm in a blinding wave. Silence followed. Even the hive song dimmed. From the crater's heart, something moved. At first, Kyra thought it was a drone. The silhouette was humanoid, but too bulky, too alien to be flesh. Then the figure straightened, dragging itself from the smoking pit with the deliberate weight of someone who meant to stand despite pain. Not a drone, a human. And not just any human, one wearing armor unlike anything Kyra had ever seen. It was old, older than the war between Volcrothi and Swarm, a Terran design from the long-dead Confederacy. Plating of dull gray and scorched titanium wrapped around a tall, broad-shouldered figure, pockmarked with scars and burns that told stories of 100 battles. The helmet's visor glowed faintly cobalt blue, cutting through the dust like a lighthouse through fog. On his back, a long rifle, no standard issue weapon, and at his hip, a curved plasma blade that purred like a sleeping predator. The man reached up, twisted the helmet seals, and with a hiss of pressure release, lifted it free. He was younger than Kyra expected, perhaps mid-30s in human years, with sharp, unshaven features and dark hair matted with sweat. A scar crossed the bridge of his nose, and his eyes, a piercing steel gray, scanned the battlefield with a soldier's practiced calm. And then, he smiled. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice lazy, casual, as if this were a social call and not a dying world. Traffic was hell. Kyra stared at him, stunned into silence. Around them, the swarm reoriented, forming a half-circle to contain the new arrival. Data chant poured from their Vox emitters, new variable detected. Human biosignature confirmed. Threat level, recalculating. The man rolled his shoulders, then gave a little two-fingered wave in Kyra's direction. "Hey there, I'm guessing you're not on their team?" Her throat worked before words came. "Who are you?" He gave a half grin, like he'd been asked that too many times. "Name's Rex, Special Recon, Terran Expeditionary Corps, at least. I was..." The swarm didn't care about introductions. They moved again, precise, coordinated, murderous. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, sizzling arcs of green-white death. Rex didn't flinch. He drew his plasma blade, a slender, glowing arc of cobalt, and moved. It wasn't the clumsy, brute force movement Kyra expected from a heavy armored human. It was fluid, economical, each step measured, each strike premeditated. The blade hummed through the first drone's neck, severing it in one clean sweep. He pivoted, letting plasma fire streak past him, and drove the weapon backward into the chest of another. 3 seconds. 5 enemies down. Kyra blinked. Impossible. Not impossible, he called over his shoulder, ducking beneath a blast and launching himself forward with a burst from his suit's thrusters. Just improbable. The swarm focused fire on him now, reassessing their priorities. Kyra saw an opening, and her warrior's instinct screamed at her to move. She charged, spear half in hand, slamming into the flank of the formation. Together, they tore through the drones like wolves through a herd. Where Kyra was a scalpel, precise, elegant, honed by tradition, Rex was a storm, wild and brutal. His movements unpredictable but devastating. Plasma hissed, metal shrieked, and the ground ran slick with synthetic fluids. It was over in minutes. The last drone fell, twitching, its internal systems whirring their final death song. Silence draped over the battlefield once more, but this time it was the silence of victory. Kyra stood panting, chest heaving, her armor scorched and bleeding from a dozen shallow wounds. Rex, by contrast, leaned casually against a chunk of rubble, blade slung over his shoulder as if he'd just taken a leisurely stroll. "Well," he said, flashing that infuriating grin again, "looks like I arrived just in time." Kyra approached him slowly, still half convinced this was some fever dream brought on by blood loss and nanite poison. "You fell from orbit. No ship, no drop pod. Just, yeah," he said with a shrug. "Didn't really plan that part. My transport took a hit up there. Swarm interceptors, nasty little bastards. I had about 30 seconds to make a choice, burn up on re-entry, or try to aim for the loudest explosion I could see." He gestured to the citadel ruins around them. "Lucky me, huh?" She stared at him, incredulous. "You're insane." "Probably," he admitted, "but it's worked out so far." A moment passed, long enough for Kyra to notice the faint tremor in his hands, the labored breath he tried to hide. He was exhausted. Human physiology wasn't built for atmospheric re-entry, not without a proper capsule. Even with an exosuit, the G-forces alone should have liquefied his organs. Yet here he was, standing, fighting, smiling. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why help me? Why risk your life for a stranger?" Rex's grin softened. "Because strangers are just friends I haven't saved yet." She frowned. "That is a foolish answer." "Yeah," he said, looking up at the red sky. "But it's the only one I've got." A warning ping cut through their brief calm. Kyra's visor flaring red. She turned east, heart sinking. On the horizon, new shapes stirred, larger, heavier, more numerous. The next wave. The swarm never stopped. "They're regrouping," she said, "and we're not prepared." Rex sheathed his blade and checked his rifle's power cell. "Then let's get prepared. You do not understand," she snapped. "The citadel is gone. My people, they are gone. This was our final stand. Then maybe," he said, eyes narrowing at the advancing tide. "It's time to stop standing." Kyra hesitated. For the first time since the siege began, a sliver of something crept into the hollow where despair had nested. It was not quite hope, not yet, but it was something close. "What are you suggesting, human?" He looked back at her, expression deadly serious. "I'm suggesting we take the fight to them." She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for arrogance, for madness, for anything that would make the words ring hollow. Instead, she found conviction. "I am Kyra, daughter of Valor," she said finally, lifting the broken spear haft. "And I do not run." "Good," Rex said, smiling again. But this time, the smile was sharp. "Because I don't either." They stood side by side, battered but unbroken. As the shadow of the next swarm rose on the horizon, the warrior of a dying people, the last soldier of a forgotten empire, and for the first time in a long, bloody war, Arcanus was about to fight back. The battlefield was quiet now, unnaturally so. The acrid wind slithered through the scorched wreckage of the citadel, carrying with it the stench of charred metal and nanite decay. Above them, the red sun had begun to dip below the horizon, bleeding its last light across the fractured skyline of Arcanus. Long shadows stretched like skeletal fingers over the sand. Kyra knelt in that silence, her hands resting on the two halves of Lysanther. The spear's neutron core still pulsed weakly, an echo of the weapon it once was. Her people's greatest relic, broken. Her city, fallen. Her house, gone. All that remained was her, and the stranger who'd fallen from the sky. Rex crouched a few meters away, rummaging through the remains of a destroyed swarm drone. He had removed his helmet, tossing it aside in the sand, and was elbow-deep in a tangle of chitinous plating and leaking synth fluid. What are you doing?" Kyra asked, her voice hoarse but steady, looking for a calm node. He said, not looking up, "Swarm units relay data to their hive cores constantly. If we can pull the last few seconds of memory before they went down, we might get a glimpse of where the next wave's coming from." Kyra frowned. "You salvage their dead." He smirked. "I prefer repurpose." She shook her head. Humans, always poking and prying, even on the edge of annihilation. But there was something reassuring about his composure, the way he moved with deliberate purpose, as if he'd seen 100 battlefields worse than this one and knew how to survive them all. "Got it," Rex said after a few minutes. He yanked a glowing shard of crystalline circuitry free from the drone's chest and wiped it clean on his armored knee. "Let's see what we've got." He plugged the shard into a port on his wrist gauntlet. Blue light flared across his HUD, and he whistled softly. I was right." "About what?" "They're not regrouping randomly. The swarm's converging on a single location. Big one, 10 clicks east." Kyra's breath caught. "The relay spire." "Relay spire?" Rex raised an eyebrow. "It's the swarm's command nexus on this continent," she explained. "Standing slowly. It coordinates their movements, synchronizes their hive minds. Without it, their ground forces will become disorganized, slower, vulnerable. Then that's our target." She stared at him, unsure she'd heard correctly. "You want to attack the relay spire? With what army?" Rex stood and dusted himself off. "Army? Nah, armies are messy. I'm thinking more of a 2-person surgical strike." Kyra laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that felt strange on her tongue. "To people against a swarm stronghold, you are either mad or suicidal. Probably both," he said with a grin. "But here's the thing. Suicidal plans are often the ones they least expect." Kyra paced a few steps away, gazing east toward the horizon. Even from here, she could see the faint silhouette of the spire, a jagged black tower stabbing into the evening sky, pulsing with malevolent light. Tens of thousands of swarm units would be guarding it. Even more would be inside. It was impossible, and yet, her people had once believed the swarm invincible too, and she had broken their war engines with her spear. Her sister, Ren, had once said, "Victory is not in the odds, Kyra. It is in the refusal to accept them." She closed her eyes. Ren's voice was gone now, swallowed by the storm. But the memory remained. "If we were to attempt this," Kyra said slowly, "we would need to cross 10 kilometers of open ground. Swarm patrols would detect us within minutes." Rex nodded. "We'll need stealth, then," she continued. "We must breach their perimeter and infiltrate the spire's interior, without triggering the central defense grid. Ghost tactics," he said. "I can handle that part, and once inside, we have to overload the spire's fusion core. But doing so will trigger a failsafe. We'd have less than a minute to escape before the entire structure collapses." Rex's grin widened. "Sounds like a plan." She stared at him. "This is madness, maybe," he said. "But it's better than waiting here to die." There was a long silence between them, the kind that stretched and twisted, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Kyra looked down at her shattered spear, then back at the human who had fallen from the sky and changed everything. For the first time since the fall of the Citadel, she felt the faint ember of purpose stir in her chest. "Very well," she said. "We will strike the spire." Rex extended a hand toward her. "Partners?" She hesitated. The Valkrathi did not shake hands. Their people clasped wrists, or placed their foreheads together to seal an oath. But there was something honest in the gesture, something human. Slowly, she reached out and took his hand. "Partners," she said. They set out at dusk. The wasteland east of the Citadel was a graveyard, a scarred expanse of blackened dunes and rusted metal, the remains of 100 failed offensives littered across the sands. The skeletons of old war machines jutted from the ground like the bones of dead gods, their hulks half buried beneath centuries of wind-blown ash. Kyra moved silently, her armor's servos dampened to a whisper. Rex followed close behind, his exosuit's stealth field shimmering faintly in the fading light. Every few hundred meters, they paused, scanning the horizon, listening for the telltale hum of patrol units. Twice, they hid from swarm skirmishers, vast, insectoid constructs gliding silently overhead, their sensor rays sweeping the ground like cold, mechanical eyes. And twice, they evaded detection, slipping from shadow to shadow like ghosts. During one such pause, as they crouched behind the rusted husk of an ancient Valkrothy war engine, Kyra spoke. "You fight like a Valkrothy." Rex raised an eyebrow. "That a compliment?" "It is meant as one," she said. "You are reckless, but your strikes are deliberate, calculated. You fight as though you have no fear." He chuckled. "Oh, I'm terrified. Fear's just familiar. I stopped letting it make my decisions a long time ago. Your people, the Terrans. You were warriors once. Long ago. Still are," he said softly, scanning the horizon. "Just fewer of us now." She studied him. "Why are you here, Rex, truly?" "For a long time." He didn't answer. Then he sighed and leaned back against the old war machine, his gaze drifting up toward the blood-red sky. "I was part of a recon unit. We were tracking swarm expansion beyond the outer rim. Thought we were prepared for what we'd find." He shook his head. "We weren't." "What happened?" "They wiped us out. 200 soldiers. Gone in less than a day. I barely made it off-world." His voice was quiet now, hollow. "I told myself I'd never run again. That if I ever got another chance, I'd fight back, no matter the odds." Kyra said nothing. There was nothing to say. But she understood. They were both the last remnants of something larger. Pieces of shattered civilizations clinging to purpose amidst the ruins. And now, fate, or chance, or something greater, had brought them together. Hours passed. The red sun sank fully below the horizon, and Arcanus was bathed in twilight. The sky painted in bruised purples and dying golds. Ahead of them, rising from the sands like a black blade driven into the heart of the world, loomed the relay spire dot. It was colossal, taller than any structure Kyra had ever seen, its surface pulsing with streams of green and violet light. Swarm units crawled along its exterior like ants tending their queen, while heavy plasma turrets tracked silently across the perimeter. Rex crouched low, scanning the structure through the scope of his rifle. "Damn, that's a lot of firepower. It will only increase the closer we get," Kyra said. "We must move carefully." He glanced at her, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Carefully's my middle name." She gave him a flat look. "I doubt that. You're right. It's trouble." Kyra almost smiled. They were less than a kilometer from the spire when the night shattered. A distant shriek, high and mechanical, cut through the silence. Searchlights swept the dunes. The ground trembled beneath their feet. "Patrol," Rex hissed. "No," Kyra said, her voice grim. "Something worse." A shadow fell over them, vast, winged, and metallic. It descended with terrifying grace, talons of alloy tearing into the sand. The swarm had unleashed a sentinel, towering 20 meters tall. It was part drone, part warship, a flying fortress armed with pulse cannons and shield emitters. Its many eyes glowed red as it scanned the dunes. "We've been detected," Kyra said. Rex drew his rifle and grinned. "Then I guess stealth's off the table." The sentinel roared, a sound like grinding metal and breaking planets, and the night erupted in fire. It descended like a demon of alloy and vengeance, its wings slicing the air with sonic booms, its red eyes locking onto the two tiny figures standing defiant in the wastes. Plasma fire lanced downward, scorching the dunes and throwing molten sand into the air. Kyra dove behind a jagged slab of wreckage, the heat of the blast searing even through her damaged armor. Beside her, Rex rolled into cover, rifle already in his hands, sentinel class. Kyra hissed over the roar. "Heavy assault platform, plasma cannons, directional shields, gravitic anchors. It will slaughter us if we stay in the open." "Got it," Rex said, peeking out just long enough to fire a 3-round burst at the sentinel's underbelly. The shots sparked harmlessly against its shields, And here I was thinking this would be easy. The ground shook as the sentinel landed with bone-crushing force, sending a shockwave rippling through the sand. It unfolded its wings into massive shield arrays, plasma cannons humming with lethal energy. Kyra clutched the broken haft of Lysanthir, breathing hard. "We cannot destroy it. Then we don't," Rex said. "We distract it." Her visor flickered with tactical overlays as his meaning sank in. The relay spire loomed less than a kilometer away. If they could draw the sentinel off course, even briefly, they could still breach the perimeter. "It will not be fooled easily," she warned. Rex's lips curved into a grin. "Good thing I'm not easy to ignore." Before she could protest, he broke from cover and sprinted across the sands, drawing the sentinel's attention with a volley of rifle fire. The machine roared and pivoted, plasma cannons tracking him with terrifying precision. Blasts followed him across the dunes, detonating around him in geysers of molten glass and shrapnel. "Rex," Kyra shouted, "you'll be killed. Only if I stop moving." He yelled back, sliding down a dune and disappearing behind a ridge. Kyra took her chance. She broke into a sprint, using the chaos as cover. Every muscle screamed, every breath tasted of blood and nanite poison, but she did not slow. The spire's outer defense perimeter rose before her, a wall of living alloy bristling with turrets and sensor rays. The ground erupted behind her. The sentinel had seen through the distraction. It turned its fury back toward the spire, raining plasma down in a blistering storm. But it was too late. Kyra reached the perimeter and slammed a charge from her belt. Against the alloy wall, the blast tore a hole just wide enough for a Volcrothi warrior. She slipped inside. The heart of the beast interior of the relay spire was a labyrinth, corridors of living metal pulsing with green light, conduits carrying streams of hive data like veins pumping blood. Drones crawled along the walls, their movements insectal and synchronized. Oblivious to the intruder who stalked among them, Kyra moved like a shadow. Her training took over, every step measured, every breath controlled. Twice, patrols passed within arm's reach. Twice, she pressed herself into the walls. Invisible dot at the heart of the spire lay the fusion core, a towering column of pulsing energy that hummed with a sound too low for the human ear. It was here that the swarm's commands were born. It was here that she would end them. Her wrist console chimed softly. "Core access panel located. Security override. Impossible. Then we do this the old way." She muttered. She attached the last of her charges to the base of the core. Not enough to destroy it outright, but enough to destabilize the containment field. Once triggered, it would overload and consume itself in a chain reaction. As she worked, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold, mechanical, omnipresent. "Volcrothi unit detected. Surrender. Your data will be preserved. Resistance is non-optimal." "I am not data," she hissed, "and I do not surrender." She pressed the detonator. A low hum became a shriek as the core's energy fluctuated wildly. Alarms blared. The walls pulsed crimson. Self-destruct sequence initiated. Containment failure in 60 seconds. She turned to run and stopped dead. The passage was blocked. Dozens of drones poured in from every corridor, encircling her once more. Their weapons crackled to life. She raised her broken spear haft, chest heaving. "Come, then. Let us end this." And then the ceiling exploded. The Sky Madman returns. A thunderclap split the chamber as a figure crashed through the ceiling in a hail of sparks and debris. Rex, smoke trailed from his armor, one shoulder plate missing, his rifle long gone. But his plasma blade still burned in his hand, and his grin was as infuriatingly cocky as ever. "Miss me," he called, landing beside her in a crouch. "Idiot." Kyra shouted. "You were supposed to escape and let you have all the fun," he winked. "Not a chance." The drones surged forward. They fought back to back, warrior and soldier, spear and blade. The chamber became a storm of plasma and steel. Kyra's spear haft cracked skulls and split circuits. Rex's blade carved glowing arcs through the tide. They were hopelessly outnumbered, but they moved with the precision of a single organism, covering each other's flanks, anticipating each other's movements, every strike an echo of the other. 30 seconds, Kyra. Rex shouted, "We have to go." She cut down a drone and glanced toward the exit, swarming with enemies. "We'll never make it." Rex's eyes darted upward. "We don't have to." He activated his thrusters and grabbed her around the waist. "Hold on." What? The blast of his suit's jump jets hurled them into the air, smashing through the ceiling and into a maintenance shaft above. Metal screamed as they tore through layers of the spire's internal structure, each explosion below shaking the tower to its core. 15 seconds. Almost there. Rex grunted, forcing the suit beyond its limits. Sparks spat from his thrusters. Warning lights flared red. "Come on, baby, hold together." They burst out of the spire's side, tumbling into the open night sky. The wind roared around them as they fell, the sands of Arcanus rushing up to meet them. 5 seconds. Rex twisted in midair, activating the last of his thrusters to slow their descent. They hit the ground hard, tumbling across the dunes in a tangle of limbs and armor. Kyra looked back. The relay spire was collapsing. A blinding column of light erupted from its base, climbing into the heavens. The tower shuddered, cracked, and then, with a sound like the death cry of a god, imploded in on itself. The shockwave raced across the desert, flattening swarm units and turning the sentinel above into a rain of molten metal. And then there was silence, a deep, profound silence that spoke of victory. Aftermath. Kyra lay on her back, staring up at the stars that now burned unobstructed above Arcanus. The air was still. The hive song was gone. You did it," she whispered. "We did it," Rex corrected, collapsing beside her with a pained groan. "And by the way, that landing sucked." She turned her head, studying him in the starlight. His armor was wrecked, his face streaked with soot and blood, but his eyes still held that same impossible fire. "You are insane," she murmured. "Yeah," he said, smiling weakly. "But I'm your insane." Kyra laughed, a real laugh, light and unburdened. For the first time in what felt like centuries, she stared up at the night sky and felt something stir deep within her chest, that hope. Not the fragile, fleeting hope of the desperate, but the steady, enduring kind. The kind that grows roots. The kind that builds futures. Rex turned his head toward her. "So what now?" She thought for a long moment before answering. "Now, we rebuild. We gather the survivors. We reclaim what was lost, and you'll need help with that," he said, grinning. "Good thing I'm not going anywhere." She arched an eyebrow. "Are you offering your services, human?" He rolled onto his side and offered her a hand. "Mind if I stay?" Kyra looked at his hand, scarred, calloused, offered without hesitation, and then took it. "No," she said softly. "I would like that." Above them, the first dawn in a long, dark age broke over Arcanus. The sun rose not on ashes and ruin, but on the faint, fragile promise of something new. A warrior without a people, a soldier without a cause, and together, the beginning of a legend.